Hello again. Happy Halloween. Today, to keep on the theme, I thought it might be nice to read you some creepy kind of poems and to share with you one of my favourite books that I own. It's this one. Some of you might recognise it. And I must admit that I really do love so much about this book. From, of course, the contents of it, but also these amazing little illustrations. I really enjoy creepy stories and poems, as well as more dark art as well. When I found this, I was awestruck. I was really excited to find it. I first discovered Edward Gorey, this book, and the second book in this series. I found them in the library when I was at university. And I've been on the lookout for them ever since to buy for myself. I've had this one for a few years now, and I would like to purchase the others in the series too. I believe there are 4 of them. There is the first, which is this one. That's Amphigori, or Amphigori. I'm not sure how to pronounce, but I'm pretty sure it's Amphigori. The second is Amphigori 2, T-O-O. There is third, which is Amphigori also, and the fourth, Amphigori again. I have only seen the first two books. I haven't read the rest of them, but I would love to own those ones too. Edward Gorey wrote and illustrated over 100 books. And many of them, including this one, include black and white drawings. I think it's just ink drawings. This Amphigori is one series of the many books that he produced. But his style is very much darker. They definitely have an unsettling feeling about them, but also a bit of humour. Some parts are like dark humour, and most are set in Victorian or Edwardian England, which adds to the Gothic theme. And I believe that Tim Burton was heavily inspired by his work too, which I can definitely see. And a lot of these poems in here really remind me of the scene in Edward Scissorhands. When his father, his creator, is reading stories to him. But I think they're super fun, and I'm really glad that I managed to find it. I would love to own the others someday too. There are some that are quite dark, which I will leave out of this video. But I really like the fun humour of most of them. Most are quite harmless. So let's begin reading some poems. There are 15 stories in this book, but today I will be reading some poems for you. There was a young lady named Rose who fainted whenever she chose. She did so one day while playing croquet, but was quickly revived with a hose. My trip, it was vile, baklava I loathed, Etna was crawling with lava. The ship was all white, but it creaked in the night, and the band, they did not know La Java. There was a young woman named Plunnery, who rejoiced in the practice of gunnery, till one day, unobservant, she blew up a servant, and was forced to retire to a nunnery. A certain young man, it was noted, went about in the heat thickly coated. He said, "You may scoff, but I shan't take it off. Underneath I am horribly bloated." A dreary young bank clerk named Fennis wished to foster an aura of menace. To make people afraid, he wore gloves of grey suede and white footgear intended for tennis. A lady was seized with intent to revise her existence misspent, so she climbed up the dome of St. Peter's in Rome, where she stayed through the following Lent. A gift was delivered to Laura from a cousin who lived in Gomorrah. Wrapped in tissue and crepe, it was peeled like a grape and emitted a pale greenish aura. A clerical student named Prine, through pain sought to reach the divine. He wore a hair shirt, quite often ate dirt, and bathed every day in brine. A lady both callous and brash met a man with a vast black moustache. She cried, "Shave it, oh do, and I'll put it with glue on my hat as a sort of panache." A guest in a household quite charmless was informed its eccentric was harmless. If you're caught unawares at the head of the stairs, just remember he's eyeless and armless. Each night father fills me with dread when he sits on the foot of my bed. I'd not mind that he speaks in gibbers and squeaks, but for 17 years he's been dead. A young man grew increasingly peaky in a house where the hinges were squeaky. The ferns curled up brown, the ceilings flaked down, and all of the faucets were leaky. There was a young sportsman named Peel, who went for a trip on his wheel. He pedalled for days through crepuscular haze, and returned feeling somewhat unreal. A timid young woman named Jane found parties a terrible strain. With movements uncertain, she'd hide in a curtain and make sounds like a rabbit in pain. A young lady who lived by the Usk subsided each day on a rusk. She ate the first bite before it was light, and the last crumb sometime after dusk. At the villa Nemeter the sleepers are disturbed by a phantom in weepers. It beats all night long, a dirge on a gong, as it staggers about in the creepers. There was a young lady named Flieger, who was terribly, terribly eager to be all the rage on the tragedy stage, though her talents were pitifully meagre. From the bathing machine came a din, as of jollification within. It was heard far and wide, and the incoming tide had a definite flavour of gin. As tourists inspected the apse, an ominous series of raps came from under the altar, which caused some to falter and others to shriek and collapse. The dowager Duchess of Spout collapsed at the height of a rout. She found strength to say, as they bore her away, I should never have taken the trout. An indefatigable woman named Bavel had often occasion to travel. On the way she would sit and furiously knit, and on the way back she'd unravel. An old gentleman's crotchets and quibblings were a terrible trial to his siblings, but he was not removed till one day it was proved that the bell ropes were damp with his dribblings. There was a young man named Fred, who spent every Thursday in bed. He lay with his feet outside of the sheet and the pillows on top of his head. There was a young man who appeared to his friends with a full growth of beard. They at once said, although we can't say why it's so, the effect is uncommonly weird. The baby, lying meek and quiet upon the customary rug, has dreams about rampage and riot, and will grow up to be a thug. The cad decides he has grown weary of this affair and this and that, and so he tells her just how dreary he thinks she is, then leaves the flat. The nun is fearfully bedevilled. She runs about and moans and shrieks. Her flesh is bruised, her clothes dishevelled. She's been like this for weeks and weeks. The tourist huddles in the station, while slowly night gives way to dawn. He finds a certain fascination in knowing that all the trains are gone. The visitor is somewhat pensive when she arrived to pay a call, but now she's faint and apprehensive from hours of waiting in the hall. The Yeghorn rubber soles comes creeping inside the house when it's late, and while the occupants are sleeping, removes the heirlooms and the plate. The wanton, though she knows its dangers, must needs smear kohl about her eyes, and wake in the interest of strangers with long-drawn, hoarse, erotic sighs. And just one story called The Sinking Spell. Oh look, there's something way up high, a creature floating in the sky. It is not merely sitting there, but falling slowly through the air. The clouds grew pink and gold, its knees were level with the evening trees. Morose, inflexible, aloof, It hovered just above the roof. It's gone right through and come to rest on Great Granduncle Ogred's chest. It settled further in the night and gave the maid an awful fright. Head first, without a look or word, it's left the 4th floor for the 3rd. The weeks went by. It made its way a little lower every day. Each time one thought it might have stopped, one found, however, it had dropped. One wonders just what can be meant by this impalpable descent. It did not linger, after all, forever in the upstairs hall. It found the drawing room in turn and slipped inside the Chinese urn. It now declines in fretful curves among the pickles and preserves. It's gone beneath the cellar floor, we shall not